Hello, welcome back to the Tracy Developer Meetup. This is the February edition. We met recently at the end of January to do some game development stuff, but once a month, that's when we meet for Tracy Devs. We have a repeat speaker tonight, Chris Mitchell. But before we get into what Chris is going to show us, let's go over some logistical stuff for the group. So we are live right now. So if you have any questions at all, drop them in the chat. I'll be proctoring the chat or moderating the chat. So anything you have that you want to ask Chris, just go ahead and drop it in and I'll interrupt him so that way he can answer it. If there's any kind of audio-visual issues with tonight's meetup, please also drop those in the chat so that way I can work to correct them as fast as possible. Before we get into the material, I did want to just do a glance at the group's landing page. So I'm sharing my screen right now. So this is the tracydevs.com website. It has our meetup calendar for at least the next 6 months. So we have a very, I guess you can say, poppin' 6 months coming up, starting with tonight being Lambda with Chris. So if you want to be an active participant in the group, please visit tracydevs.com. If you want to speak at the group in the future, also please visit. I have my contact information on that site as well. Chris, why don't you introduce yourself? And I'm not sharing your screen right now, but people can see and hear you. So why don't you just give the 411 on what you're all about here?
Cool. Thanks, Nick. Yeah. So my name's Chris Mitchell. I am a senior programmer analyst working at E&J Gallo Winery. I like lots of things AWS Lambda. So tonight I'm going to talk about how to send your code from a Git repository, something like GitHub, to a live Lambda function using some continuous integration tools.
Awesome. This sounds good. Should I go ahead and switch over to your screen right now?
Sure. Yep. You will get a repeat of what I kind of just said because that's my
all right.
slide. It's perfect.
Yeah, and follow Chris online by the end of this. So Twitter, MotoBreath, right?
Yep, I'm MotoBreath at Twitter and GitHub. And then I also got my blog up at blog.chrismitchellonline.com.
And you do post a lot of AWS stuff on that blog, right?
Yeah, it's actually, I'm not, the huge blogger. Probably I try to hit once or twice every other month or so, give or take. So, but it's there. There's some pretty good content, especially around all of this. I've been working a lot at the job on how to do this kind of CI integration stuff with Lambda a lot lately. So you'll see that some more content up there. If you're interested in this talk, there's more content there. It's a great topic too. I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, sorry to interrupt, but if you're watching this right now from YouTube, please go ahead and hit that like button and also subscribe to the channel so that way you don't miss out. Oh, back to you, Chris.
Cool. All right. So there's my info there. I'm used to this being a live in-person kind of talk, so that's kind of how my slides are set up. Usually they're up on the board when everyone walks in. So there's the intro from me. And like I mentioned, we're going to go from code to Lambda. It's actually a big question that I get a lot in the Lambda world is how do we move code from GitHub or any repository to Lambda? Most tutorials, everything that you see online, it's mostly just deploy your functions with uploading code. So I really have taken on the task of figuring out how to automate all of this using some CI tools so we don't have to do it manually. So a little bit more about me. I like to run this thing I call Chris Mitchell Online, just a blog and a way to get in touch with me, chrismitchellonline.com. I like to throw some thoughts up there. I work at E&J Gallo Winery as a senior programmer analyst. It's just a fancy term for, started out as a web developer and now I do a lot of this AWS stuff. On this side, I like to play a lot of guitar and go to concerts, when I used to be able to do that kind of thing. So good times. Also, I wanted to point out, working at E&J Gallo is a great place to work. Just a quick plug for them. If anyone's looking for programmer work, they're always hiring. There's lots of positions open. So if you're interested, drop me a line. we can talk. It's a great place. They're very innovative, which to me I thought was a little strange. They're the largest winery in the world, so I'm thinking, enterprise slow, Java, blah blah blah, but they're not. We're very much fast as much as we can, and you'll see some of the tools that we use today. So, like I said, if you're interested in anything there, go ahead and drop me a line for that too. Quick logistics from my side. This stuff is kind of hard. I think it's kind of hard. If you guys are better at it, please speak up and let me know what I'm doing wrong. There's lots of moving pieces. It's the microarchitecture world that we live in now. Everything is blown up into all these little pieces, and they live all over, AWS and all over the cloud. But the good news is it's scalable, configurable, but also complicated. So that being said, this probably isn't the only way to do what I'm doing either. The whole CICD, continuous integration, continuous development stack is like its own beast. Like you really have a career just in this. So what I'm going to show today is just the way that I do it. And it's probably not the best way. I don't know. We'll see. You can please let me know. And then, so please interrupt. Please ask questions. Hopefully the demo gods are good, and I will break some things, hopefully, because that's how I like to learn. So what are we going to do? So I'm going to talk about moving a feature code from a local development to live AWS Lambda. And then how can we automate that so we don't have to pretty much do anything. From the developer standpoint, my goal has always been, let's push code. Like if I'm a developer, if I'm a programmer, I want to write code. I don't really want to figure out how to, push code to the cloud. Some people kind of do all of that and whatnot, but if we want to really push some stuff out fast, we're going to try to automate it. So that's kind of what we're going to focus on here. So I call it the code journey. So what are the steps? So I kind of wrote out these things here. This is what I would do on a daily basis or whenever I finish a task with my code. I finish a feature, I push the code. We can do like an approved or a denied stage, and then you merge into Git and so on and so on. So the list goes on. And then even I added that open one at the very end. Additional housekeeping chores. I mean, the integration pipeline can be huge. I think the stuff that we do is probably, even this little list right here might be small compared to like a full giant continuous integration platform. So we're going to look at how this code can make this journey. And it's a lot of steps. We don't want a tisk from a manager. So we need to get them all right, and we need to get them all right all the time. It's just going to save hours of time development. Less error prone. The company's going to do better overall. We're not going to introduce bugs, all that kind of stuff. I will say that when I first started doing Lambda, we had no deployment process, and yes, stuff broke a lot because we're stepping on toes. We're not, we have no process. So we're really going to take a look here and see, at least in the beginning, of what we can do to automate this stuff into Lambda. So we're going to try to replace all of those steps with our favorite GitHub and AWS CodePipeline. Like I mentioned before, there's so many different ways to do this. This isn't the only way to do it, but this is pretty much what I'm going to focus on here tonight. And then I'll also explain and kind of demonstrate a little bit some of the tools that AWS uses, like CodePipeline, and how they can be extended beyond just this, just beyond like a simple GitHub workflow. It's really a powerful tool, so I'm excited to show it off. So first thing we have to think about here is a Git process. So when a developer finishes a feature and they push and pull code, we need the workflow to take over. There's no more stepping in and saying, oh, I pushed the code, but I want to change it now. Or, later on down the line, can I just pop into production real quick and update some code? We're not going to do that. So the developer needs to be hands off after an approval. So that's where we can really define our Git process of like a pull request and an approval, and then our automated pipelines kick in. And it's just the whole workflow. So that's kind of the first step that we had to take too. As a company, we've really worked on our processes to define how this works, so everyone can do this in the same way, and it makes it a lot easier. And we don't step on each other's toes as much, not nearly as much. Anyways, so it's kind of a quick over I guess 10,000 foot look at what I'm talking about here. We got the coder on the left. I hope you guys love my super ingenious drawings here. of how we do our pull request features and whatnot. So pull coder submits a feature to something like GitHub. The pull request is generated. Everyone gets notified. You can talk about it. You can deny it. We can do all the stuff, or it can get approved. And from the approval side is where we're going to kind of talk about next year and move on to how that code will move into Lambda, AWS and Lambda specifically. So a quick demo. I can show what I'm talking about here as far as where we're going with GitHub. It's not too complicated. I just kind of wanted to set the stage here real quick about how maybe my code would look and what we're looking at. So I'm using Visual Code here. And Nick, can you see my screen okay? Like when I'm switching out of slideshows and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we see Visual Studio Code open right now.
Perfect. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't moving too fast or anything.
No, it looks great, and the font looks to be perfect size.
Nice. I like a little bit bigger of a font personally too. So all I've got going on here is just a simple Lambda function. Don't let any specific Lambda tasks or syntax, kind of throw you off. It's just JavaScript running in Lambda. And so I have my hello world function here that I always like to demonstrate. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to start over here. Let me just make sure I'm on master. And for those of you out there who don't know, I am a CLI guy, so I type out all my Git stuff. Sometimes I'll cheat and use the Visual Studio plugins and whatnot, but for the most part, I just live in the terminal, be able to push the stuff and talk to AWS. So
how
I'm
many
going to start
people are
off
sharing a project with you?
What's that?
Typically, how many people are sharing a project with you?
Good question. Yeah, we have 3 other dedicated Lambda developers besides myself. So sharing probably about 100 or so Lambda functions. And then I also work on kind of the side team with another 2 or 3 developers, and I'm kind of introducing them, helping them move to Lambda as well. So we're not too a lot, but it's getting up there.
When you're using the command line and there's three or so other people, are you constantly fighting over with merges and rebases, or works out pretty smooth?
It's actually pretty smooth, and that's kind of how what I'm doing here, what I'm showing is it's actually been working pretty good. One thing I'm not going to touch on in this specific talk, but I do have another Lambda talk. I think I did it in the group a little while ago, but how to do things in Lambda as far as versioning, so we don't step on each other's toes even more. So we'll use Git and branches and features and then GitHub to kind of merge all that stuff together. And then we'll have a workflow that gets that into Lambda in versioning. And then also our own little branches and whatnot in the cloud. So we can kind of slowly but surely merge code into like an acceptance area. And then everybody can test it from there.
Got it. All right, sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good. Oh, it's great. Like I said, we don't have I wouldn't imagine this workflow working for hundreds of people or whatever, but it's for a small team, or even for somebody to get started into pushing code into Lambda. I think this works great. So I'll start with I'm just going to create a new branch here. It's for my feature. I'll just call it feature A. And so now I'm on the new branch. I'll make my updates. Push the code, see it go. I'm just going to update the README. So I have a new version here. Lots of updates. I'm going to save that. And now, so technically I have a new feature. I have a new code set I'd like to get reviewed. I'd like to get pushed up to Lambda. I'd like to see it run in there. So I'm going to do a git commit. I'll just make it easy. I'm going to do all and set a message. New feature up. Then I'm going to just do a git push. And so right off the bat, it tells me that I can't just push right to there. So I use this quick little message that Git gives me. And this will create the upstream branch for me in GitHub and push it all up that way. So now I have a new feature branch sitting up there. And if I switch over to GitHub, it's pretty fast. It already shows me that I have a new branch sitting here, so I can compare and create a pull request. Oh, you know what? I didn't do my last, that fails on the demo gods part 1. I didn't do a pull from my last pull request, so it's going to automatically, it's not going to let me merge this. So you know what? I'm just going to kind of start over again. We'll just do.
You forget to make your sacrifice before this meetup?
Oh man. This is the Git gods. This is the Git gods actually looking out for me. They're like, hey man, you forgot to do a Git pull before you created your feature. So we're not going to even let you do any of that stuff. So starting over again, I'm going to check out -b feature. Let's go C this time. Make the other thing, and I see what you were talking about, Nick, with rebases and everything. Exactly what I'm doing right now could get complicated if you're not kind of in the same. So people are going to say, "What are all these feature branches? What are you doing?"
Yeah, because I think if you use the UI portion of Visual Studio Code, I think it either makes it easier or it doesn't even show you that kind of stuff. But in terminal, I think it could get messy.
It can. And you're right. I think it does kind of the rebasing and all this other little stuff for you behind the scenes. Have you used the new CLI tools that they have? The GitHub CLI tools?
I have not. So I actually use the just the standard CLI like you're doing right now, but I am not in the weeds like you are. Actually, I think Corbin, a regular at this meetup group, has suggested that I start using I think it was Fork, which is just a graphical user interface as well.
Oh, okay. Let's see if we can do.
I'm not a Git expert by any means.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm not either. Like as soon as anything went south, short of denied a pull request, I would have to start looking it up. But I have heard that the CLI tools, I think they mimic what how VS Code kind of does for you, like the better workflow as opposed to just branching and pushing. That's what I've heard. So I'm kind of excited to check those things out. Let's see if I can get a pull request to land. So feature C, compare. Yeah, able to merge. So I'm going to leave it sit right here for a second. So this would be the part in our workflow where over here on the right, we'd have, reviewers set up and you can assign yourself and the whole pull request process. Sometimes we can get some features that are pretty big. So we do like to utilize these tools as much as we can as far as a place to track our pull requests. GitHub is perfect for this. It's a really good tool to be able to do that. For our quick demonstration tonight, actually, I think I'll just create the pull request and I'll leave it sit at that part. This is where it would send out all the things, and then this would be the button that will kick off all the things. Typically, I wouldn't allow a developer to have this, but to make it easier, I'll just I'll do it myself. That being said, I am just now getting into this part of GitHub, like really using it as a social piece. It's been a pretty cool tool, and I'm excited to learn about how we can even further this with things like blocked merges to master and just any other kind of stuff that we can utilize GitHub with. Cool. All right, I'm going to switch back. That was the demo. Demo 1, only slightly off. I think we're good. That is my favorite GIF. One of my favorite GIFs, by the way. Cool.
Is that what you look like every day?
That's what I look like because I use the CLI all the time, so I'm just clacking away.
I imagine your commit messages are just 3 characters long, right?
Yeah. Feature A, feature B. Oh, on a serious note, we use ServiceNow as our ticketing system. I wish we used Jira, but I won't go down that path. But anyways, we append our Jira or our ServiceNow ticket numbers to the Git commit messages. So that's mostly what I do. I'm just like, yep, here's the story, guys. If you want to know what I'm actually working on, go take a look at it there. Otherwise,
so you append it or you prefix it?
I prefix it. Good call.
All right.
So it's like STK 800 numbers, and then that's it.
Yeah, I actually do that too.
Yeah, and if I'm feeling typey, I'll put like a what I'm actually working on there. Otherwise, click on the ticket. So now that we've got the GitHub part of it down, let's take a look at what that looks like, or what's next. How are we going to get into AWS? And so how I kind of focus everything is with results in a zip file in S3, because S3 you can trigger just about anything you would ever need to do in AWS with triggers, automatic triggers. So as soon as the files end up in S3, I can trigger my AWS CodePipeline, which is going to build, stage, build, promote to Lambda, all that good stuff. So that's pretty much how it's doing it under the scenes, is putting it in S3. S3 is the trigger. So there's a couple of different ways that we can get files and our code out of GitHub and into AWS. The first attempt that I did, and this is actually what I've stuck with as far as the the large Lambda work that I'm doing, is we're doing a webhook out of GitHub. So something like on land onto master. Let's send out a webhook to AWS, and we just shoot it through AWS API Gateway. And then through there, I can pipe it into whatever I need to inside AWS, including Lambda, or you can write to DynamoDB or whatever you need to do with this webhook. And I noted there too that it's an encrypted connection string. So you do have to do a little bit of work when you do this to just verify your signatures and all of that kind of stuff. This is the most configurable way to do it, I guess is the right word for it, the most powerful way to do it. So I can do pretty much anything with my code, but I do have to worry about security and setting up API gateway and all this other kind of stuff. It's powerful, but it is the most complicated. So another way that we can do it is GitHub Actions. I'm kind of new to these because, like I said, I've just used the webhooks before, and I think it's the same thing, but you're just letting GitHub do some of the heavy lifting for you. Like, instead of trying to do the encryption and all that kind of stuff, you just provide them your key. So say I created a new AWS key, just for GitHub Actions, that kind of thing, and then GitHub can push the code for me to S3, and then it's the same concept there. Once I get that code in S3, I can trigger on it and I can do all the different things that I need to do. And there's actually even a third way to do it. I call it easy code pipeline integration, because right in code pipelines, you can set up a GitHub app, and it does the like the handshake for you. And then it's all, at that point, you're just communicating with CodePipeline. So you do lose, your different integrations that you can do, but you can still do all the powerful things that CodePipeline does that I'll show here in a bit, like CodeBuild, and anything else that you could actually integrate into CodePipeline. It's just the data is going into CodePipeline instead of your own custom handler. So kind of the big picture here. It's a little small. I apologize here, but the overall theory here is that GitHub's on the outside of AWS. We're pushing through API Gateway. And then once we hit S3, we can do all of our GitHub processes, and then we can do code pipeline triggers and all that other kind of stuff. That's the ultimate goal here, with the most fully customizable thing that you can do. It's a good representation also of how we can modify and not modify. I don't know if that's the right word. How we can pipe into CodePipeline how we want to do it, so we can kind of step in between GitHub. And so a great example of this is, sometimes not all of our Lambda functions are in their own Git repos. So imagine 100 different Lambda functions. You don't really want 100 different repos. Sometimes you can, if that's the way you want to do it. But instead, what we do is we have this little GitHub process here. It's this little guy. It's hard to see, but what we'll do is we'll take the code that's committed and kind of figure out what Lambda function it goes to, and so then everybody can work on one big repo and push files in that way. So it's an interesting way of doing it, and if anyone has questions about how that part of it works, we can definitely deep dive into that side of it. That's like the whole, I call it the enterprise approach. Lots and lots of stuff going on from lots of different departments. So a little bit about CodePipeline. This is their marketing material. It works great to help me explain what CodePipeline is. Kind of highlighted some of the things that they do here. It is integrated with all the different things in AWS. It's fully managed, which is a great selling point. So to do all this stuff and anything that I'll demonstrate today, I'm not running any servers. I'm not running anything EC2. I'm not even setting anything up as far as that anything that I have to maintain short of just my pipelines. AWS does all this for us, and it's super fast and reliable. I mean, AWS isn't this part of AWS isn't going to go down. S3 and those other ones, we can talk about that later. But as far as CodePipeline, it's been a great tool for us to not maintain and to use. One thing that they kind of mention here too, because it's marketing, you only pay for what you use. It's only going to pay. You're only going to pay for your Lambda stuff. I don't believe that there's any cost for CodePipeline. I might be wrong about that, but I do believe it's only the build processes that you pay for. So you're not paying to host a CodePipeline and that kind of thing. If you only push your code once a month, you're only going to pay for that, that little bit of push. It's a really big selling point when you try to go to your manager and say, hey, I need this new service. So we can talk about the CodePipeline stages. So you get full control of each stage of the build. So when a CodePipeline happens, there's typically 3 stages of a build. So you get your source, and that's what we kind of looked at first, into Git. Your source can be other things too. I mentioned earlier that CodePipeline is super customizable. So I'm just going down the Git and Node.js route here in Lambda, but you could use CodePipeline for a ton of different things: to build Docker images, to deploy Docker, to just manage S3 files. However you want to run a pipeline on code, you could use CodePipelines for. And then you have so first is the source, and then the build stage. So how do you build your code? Same concept. With us, with Node.js, it's going to be npm install mostly, run some tests, and off to Lambda. But you could also do this with, if I needed to build Docker, if I needed to do any heavier lifting, it's a great serverless approach to managing your build in the cloud. And then lastly, typically you deploy your code somewhere. So if we're going from, in this case, we're going from GitHub to Lambda. Our destination is going to be Lambda, so we can use CloudFormation to manage those. And again, we don't have to use CloudFormation, but it's just kind of the way that I'm doing it with GitHub to Lambda. And I'll go over a couple more of those things too. Each one of these steps can be a little bit challenging, so we can go through a little bit here. So we start with the source. In our case, it was GitHub, and then just about anything. And then once we get through our source, we go through the build. So this is all serverless build, and it's AWS managed. And so what I've focused on is Node.js. So what that ultimately means is I have a Node.js like build library, I guess you could call it. Typically, it looks and acts like a Docker container that AWS builds for me to be able to build my Node.js applications. So it pre-installs things like npm and Node and anything else that I really want to configure it with. So when I launch my code, I can run it through this code build process, and I can tell it how to build a specific application using a build spec file. And I'll go over that a little bit more here when I attempt to do a demo again. But basically, what this is kind of demonstrating is I can have one build process called Node.js and then multiple build spec files. So every one of my Lambda functions can, as long as it's Node.js and as long as it's not doing anything crazy off the wall, I can kind of configure each one of them to launch how it wants to do. Maybe some of them test, maybe some of them don't, like that kind of thing. The build spec file kind of helps me control each one of the files without having to reinvent the wheel every time. And then last we get to deploy. So after our code gets built, we have to define where we're going to send our code. We don't have to send it anywhere. We could just have it build, and sit in the cloud, or send to something like an internal service like Jenkins or however we want to do it. I'll use CloudFormation here, and I've got template.yaml highlighted. That's where we'll define how it gets deployed. And then also too, on the very last bullet point there is manual approvals and also step that I'd like to point out. I think that's kind of a cool intervention that you could do. So I know at my company and maybe other companies too, they're a little hesitant to turn on the full automated pipelines to production. So we could throw something like a manual approval here in the very end that would say, okay, yes or no, that built, that looks good. Because with the build process, we could technically push it to an acceptance server, check it out visually, make sure that, if it's a website, check it out and see if the website looks good, and then go in here and say, okay, yes, that build looks great. And then it could go on and continue on with the deploy. So a super handy feature. I currently am using complete automation all the way from front to back using CloudFormation though, so that's handy too. So again, here's the big picture from start to finish. A little coder guy on the left there pushes his code, and then everything to the right is kind of where I've been living lately. And so our coders can push the code and not worry about it, and we'll do all the pipelines to get their code to Lambda in the cloud in either a production state or however we're going to go with it. So let's do a demo and a quick look. So I'll kind of pull up some of the code. So we can do a commit from the beginning. I guess in the essence of time, I've already done the commit a new feature. I'll go ahead and start with approve the pull request, and we'll see what happens. So I've got a note here that says merge into CICD branch there in the middle. Sometimes I know that some people get weird about it's the whole automation thing. They don't want code automatically merged into master. So we've been suggested to use like a CI/CD branch instead of master, so we can do that manual approval part. That's still kind of just configuration thing, however you want to do it. It's completely up to you as far as how automated you want to make it. And then we'll look at the pipeline over to GitHub and AWS and the code pipelines and see how it looks.
So for the merge step, I believe there's a way in GitHub to set it so that way somebody has to actually go to your pull request and hit the merge button before it actually continues to the next step into production. Is that something that?
That's what we've done. Yep.
Oh yeah, I thought there was you said you were doing something else, like a different type of.
No, you hit it right.
All right.
Maybe just confusion on the whole CI/CD branch part.
Yeah.
Like maybe somebody even needs to merge it into a CI/CD branch. We were kind of toying around with that idea there for a minute. Instead of going into master, let's hit a CI/CD branch instead. But it does in GitHub still all require a manual intervention with a pull request, because that's where we're going to check out our code. We're going to do the manual and the labor intensive part of code reviews. So yes, we definitely want to make sure that we hit that button.
Got it.
So let's go look at that button. So if you remember back here, back in GitHub, I have this new feature. I've created a pull request. It's great. Everything looks good to me, so I can actually switch roles here. Just kind of pretend I'm the next guy coming in. So I'm thinking this all looks good, and I'm going to go ahead and allow the pull request. So when I click this button right here, it will confirm the merge into master from our feature, and everything looks great. This part of the workflow is kind of strange to me, and I think the CLI tools can clean this up for me. You've seen it earlier when I didn't pull down the new code. So GitHub likes to tell me to delete that branch when I'm done, which totally makes sense because I'm done, it's approved. Like, let's just get rid of it. You could look at it history if you really need to. So I'll delete the branch here, but that doesn't really give my developers a way to know. Like they'll get the email that says it's approved, but they have to go in and forget, like I just did. So I think that's part of my my Git cleanup that I need to look into. Is how can I easier make those merges happen for both the developer and the approver, if that all makes sense. So the branch is merged, and so we hit master, and so then I'm going to switch over here to AWS, and I'm going to go look at my code pipelines, and it'll be magical because I set all this stuff up earlier. And so you can see my GitHub. Pay no attention to these failed ones. These are just me playing. The one we're looking at here is the GitHub pipeline. So when I hit that merge, GitHub called out to AWS and said, hey, I have new code in progress. So if I go into the code pipeline, we can go through the pipelines here, like I explained, with the source, the build, and the deploy. So we can see, this is a nice little demonstration here of what the screen does. It's pretty cool. It gives you like a real-time update of what it's doing. So you can see it grabbed my code from GitHub 1 minute ago. It succeeded. So then it passed that code on to my build stage. My build stage ran. It succeeded just now. I'll say that those build stages can take a little bit longer. I don't think they're too terribly long, upwards of a minute or two, but I could see in a bigger environment, a more complicated code set where you run a lot of tests and that kind of thing, the build stage could chug away for a little while. But ultimately, what it did was it passed the build, so everything seems to look okay for it. So it passed the built script. That's also something to know too. It literally builds it. Like it's going to do npm install. It's going to package it all up, however you define, and it's going to pass it on to the deploy. And then deploy is going to pass all that information to CloudFormation. And then it's like CloudFormation has a weird two-step thing where it creates a change set and then it deploys the change set. So if you're not familiar with CloudFormation, it was kind of new to me when I started this whole rabbit hole of how to update Lambda. CloudFormation allows us to run code on top of your infrastructure to figure out what changes need to be done. And AWS helps you with a lot of it using their tools like CodePipeline. So under the hood, CodeBuild sends CloudFormation the updated information, and it'll deploy it and execute it. And it says it succeeded. I know that was a whole lot. So let me go over and check out Lambda. Actually, we can do it like this. So first thing I like to do is go over to the Lambda world, look at my functions. You can call me a liar if it didn't actually update it. Sometimes it doesn't. You have to double check. But there you go. So last modified 2 minutes ago. So that would be my code that I pushed from my computer originally, and it ends up in here. So now we're at version 4. New version coming up. I believe that's what I pushed. That being said, this is where that manual intervention part really comes into play, because the CloudFormation stuff back here on this section here on the deploy section, it can be a bit complicated. CloudFormation is super powerful. Like you can control your entire AWS account with it, but it does come at a price of weird change sets and weird execution, like overlaps and whatnot. So I just have to be careful of that when we look at that. But ultimately, the demo gods were good to me.
Yeah, on this demo, it worked out well.
Yeah, I did kind of cheat just a little bit and set this stuff up first, but I can definitely go through here and look at, let's edit the pipelines, and let's look at each piece that we do here. So it has this, it's a pretty, I think it's okay, way of editing these pipelines through this UI. You can also do this through the CLI too. I've been kind of experimenting with, doing all this through CLI scripts or CloudFormation to build code pipelines. And I can get into that in just a minute here, but through the UI, you would just go in here and edit each stage, or it's exactly the same as creating them. So we can look at the source. So our action provider is GitHub. And then I went through and did, if you're familiar with GitHub apps, it's kind of like a, just how, what is that, OAuth, I think it's called, under the hood, where you authorize your GitHub account to talk to AWS. And so this screen right here, when you select GitHub, will do that. I skipped that step for the demo. It's literally just approve it and then go to GitHub and say, okay. And then it creates this connection right here to my account, which is super handy, because then AWS can see all of my Motobreath repositories. So now I can tell them which ones I want to pull in and check out. And then, oops, I went a little too far back there. And then same concept with the, so I picked the repository and then I picked the branch, and then some fun, like how do I want to start the pipelines? Do I want to clone it? All this different stuff. This is an interesting field here. I played with the variables a little bit. So to help, if your build process needs to know anything additional about your repository, you can just pipe them in right here. Like this is repository A for whatever reason. You can inject some variables in the source part. And then that's actually kind of handy, because then you don't have to worry about committing a lot of your CICD information to your repository. which can get confusing for people. Like, why do I have all these configuration files? So it lives in the cloud instead. To me, it seems it's really handy to keep it here. And then you can define how your artifacts go out, artifacts being the data that's passed in between. So that is stage, source. And then we'll go to build. So under the build, and this is the part where I talked about building the Node.js part. So our action provider, I use AWS CodeBuild, but you can have any other of these other guys build your code for you. You can even like call a Lambda function. It's pretty fun. You could source it from another repository. Lots and lots of integrations here. You could build to a different guy. So the integrations and the build are quite fun. I used the pretty much out of the box CodeBuild. And then kind of how you build them, how you pass the artifacts around. And then this is the project that I use. So Node.js build is how I build. And then you don't have to rebuild the Node.js server for everyone. If you have Node.js code, push it through Node.js build project. Lots more configuration options here. Batch build seems like it would be fun for that idea that I had, where if you have 100 Lambda functions, maybe we build them all at one time. Maybe we have a production day and we'd like to just build everything and push it to prod. We can do that through our build here, so you don't have to run one by one. I haven't tried that at scale. I was playing with it just out of the box, and it seems pretty handy because you end up getting a single execution. So maybe on another deep dive, we can go into batch building. For the build, this part tripped me up here. When you're building this stuff, it doesn't go into a lot of how to do the build. So I thought I would show that here real quick here. This is back to my repository that I did. I know I just mentioned that you don't have to put your CICD stuff in here, but it does need a build spec because it's going to pull this code from the repository and it needs to know how to build it. I believe there might be other ways to pipe it in with those options that we've seen, like maybe we can store it in S3 and that kind of thing. But the build spec I do put in directly in my code. So with that, it's just a YAML file of pretty straightforward as far as like your options here. If you look online, AWS documents the build phase is pretty good, so you can kind of define them here. But this is kind of the meat right here. This is because I'm using their pre-built Node.js builder. It's basically just bash. So if I wanted to do something like npm install, that's where it would happen. So npm comes out of the box. You can do that, and then you could do something like npm test, that kind of thing here. And however, n number of commands that you would like to do on your project. So this is, I think, where a little small demonstration of the power of what you can do with the build stuff. Maybe this one has super automated tests. Maybe this Lambda needs to do all this different stuff. You can define all of those here. And then lastly, what it does here is it's kind of a little bit of a cryptic command. It took me a minute to wrap my head around it. But what it's doing is it's taking the information that the commands that it runs, and it's going to pipe them into a CloudFormation package. And then we're going to write out a YAML file for that and store it in S3 with all these configuration options here. And then that's those artifacts that I mentioned earlier, how CodePipeline knows, from the next step, what am I going to do next, or how do I deploy it, blah, 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 all the different things it does. This is kind of one of those important steps right here. So it's packaging up my code. And so once we get this build spec in, that is going to run through all this stuff here. Again, with the build, if I wanted to inject variables along the way, like it passed, it didn't, whatever else I want to do, build numbers, that's probably a great place to put them. I could pipe it in here. There's a whole little language around it, so you can inject them, and you get, if you're familiar with other build tools like Jenkins and whatnot, it's the same syntax where you can grab data along the way and then throw them in there. Be pretty handy. And then once our build is done, it's going to pipe that built YAML script that I mentioned over to CodeDeploy. And CodeDeploy or sorry, just deploy. That's what I named it here. It's going to, I didn't want to get confused with actual code deploy. That's a different thing. So we have CodePipeline Deploy. So from here, what's going to happen is it's going to take that built YAML script and it's going to pass it over to CloudFormation. And CloudFormation's going to do its thing where it figures out a change set for my function. And it's going to, so I define what stack it is, CloudFormation stack, all the different variables here, where to get the artifacts from. And it's going to, in two parts, first it'll create the change set for me, and it'll validate with itself, like, okay, I'm sure I have a valid change. And then in the next step, it'll execute it, and I'll show you that in a second. So you can configure both of those steps. So if you need to do anything on the part where it creates the change set before it actually deploys your code, you can do that here. This one requires a special role. One thing I haven't mentioned much in this whole part is security. When I first tried this, I asked a data security team if I could have admin access to our production AWS accounts so I could set this all up, and I was quickly denied. But unfortunately, things like CloudFormation, because they're modifying your actual AWS account, almost account settings, really low level stuff in AWS it's trying to build for you. Especially when you're testing and whatnot, just use an administrator account. Do it in a sandbox account. And just set it, because the permissions they're insane. If you open up like this CloudFormation role here, you can have it you have to have it so fine tuned that it's just so much easier to do it administrator. Thought I'd point that out. So more again with the variables and all that other kind of stuff. And then last but not least is our execute. So that is where it takes the deploy and it builds it. So it executes the change set on the stack. Same concept here, all the different providers that you can do. And so it's really just showing all the different steps that you can do there. And then when it's done, that's when you get that nice little success message. So that's
Awesome.
all of those here. Yeah.
I assume that, there was a lot of setup that involved in getting this going. I assume that maintenance is a lot easier than
Absolutely one
setup.
of my points. I think I even have it on a point slide somewhere. I don't touch this stuff anymore. Yeah, the setup it was quite tedious in the beginning, just getting all these things together. I'm really surprised that AWS doesn't have something a little bit more streamlined. I did see with their new, with reInvent this year, I forget what it's called, but I believe it's this, in a more, point and click kind of world, less worrying about CloudFormation and less worrying about builds and all that kind of stuff. So I think they are in the works of, it's going to be funny, in a year, this will be obsolete. They'll just do it for you. But for now, I really do like the power of being able to go through all of these. And yeah, Nick, great point. Once it is an upfront dedication to get this all working. But once it does work, it's like for the functions that we have running on this, we have about 5 core functions running now that I don't touch. They just go through this. So it's super handy. A caveat, not to production. We only do this to ACC because of that manual intervention thing I was talking about. And that's just in our world. In a more, if you wanted to go to production, why the heck not? Just do it. Switch back over here. Kind of go back to my slides, see where we are. So we worked it end to end, kind of high level stuff. If anyone ever has any questions about digging deep into any of those sections, I'd be happy to share my knowledge. No problem. So a couple of the gotchas. So this was a big one. All the stuff that you'll see in AWS, I shouldn't say all, but whatever I found, they say they always have examples of new Lambda functions. So they're just assuming, that you're setting this up and getting ready to go. We were not. We have Lambda functions that are, core business functions. We cannot change them. We cannot, or we can't just rename them and convert into this part. So there's a couple of extra steps you have to take to get this process to work with the new Lambda function, and all that kind of stuff lives in CloudFormation. So in the CloudFormation setup, you have to let CloudFormation know that this is an existing function and kind of pipe it into the CloudFormation world to allow CloudFormation to do all of its changes. And that being said, CloudFormation is a beast. That's really, I think, where my work is going to go next. I'm really going to deep dive into infrastructure as code kind of world, CloudFormation being the first thing in AWS, because I really do think that if you can manage your infrastructure as code, especially everything that we just seen, like what if you could push a button and have a new Lambda function that has all of this already set up? That would be, I mean, I think people would even pay for that. So we'll see how that goes. And then change sets. I ran into a bunch of problems where, and I kind of mentioned it, the change sets don't always work. It's kind of strange. I think that they get out of sync or something. I don't know. It's probably just me being new to CloudFormation, kind of where how you manage those change sets really matters. And so you'll have a code pipeline run and it won't push your code. It's because it didn't see any new changes, so the change sets fail. Or a change set will fail to update, and so your CloudFormation thing gets there. So I put change sets ... because that's when you if and when you get stuck, that's probably going to be a spot. And then permissions. Permissions are always a sticky subject, especially in a large enterprise world with data security teams that don't like you having administrator privileges. So I have to define, like I had to basically go to them and say, I only want to use, feature A, B, and C, and here's the policy that I need. And all the tutorials and stuff that I went through to get all this going really didn't take that approach. They just said start with an administrator account. So I had to take that little extra step to do that. And then this last one, when you have to save code pipeline, I might even pop out and show you this real quick. It is the worst thing ever. When you're in CodePipeline and you're looking at this screen and you want to edit your code pipeline, you have this page right here where you can say edit. So each one of your sources, right? Or your build. So if you click edit stage and you come in here and you go through all of these screens and you do all of your updates, notice how they don't say save right here. They just say done. So you click done and you're like, cool. And now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go back to my pipeline and I'm going to run it again. No dice. You didn't actually click the save button, which is kind of strange up here at the top
So
right.
it doesn't even try to stop you when you try to navigate away?
Nope.
Saying you want to leave?
I don't think it does. Let me try. So I'm going to edit my stage. I'm going to change my build to just do, we're going to call it build new or something. I don't know. Just change a value, right? Hit done. And then I'm going to go back over and try to run my pipeline again. And no dice. It didn't stop me.
Man.
It gotchas way too many. That got me more than once. So I thought I'd throw that out there. I should probably submit a bug to AWS or a feature request. Like, please warn me before I navigate. Because I'll bet you now.
Seriously.
I'll go back in here. And
I mean, how much damage can you do as far as changes? Like how much wasted time can you potentially do in this?
Oh, absolutely. Very careful. Sandbox first. I have blown code away because one time
by not saving.
Oh, by not saving? Oh, yeah. I thought you meant the process.
Absolutely.
Could you I could just
really spend like an hour?
Sure. Look, I didn't take my thing right here. I could go through here and completely build. This is only the only edit part. Only the edit part has this lack, I should say.
All right.
But yeah, I mean, you could sit in here for an hour and adjust your deploys and create everything, and then just go over here. I believe they're saying, look at the done button versus the save button is really what you have to do. So if you guys take anything out of here when you get all this set up, make sure you hit save. That's the greatest caveat of the whole talk. Yep. All right, let me see. I went on a tangent there for a minute because that one, I swear, got me so many times. Oh, and also too, I don't have it on a gotcha here, but what you just said really does bring up a point. You absolutely can blow away all of your stuff doing anything with CloudFormation, because CloudFormation is a beast. So I suggest doing this in a sandbox, like always. Have something where you can work on it. One time I pushed the source, skipping the GitHub part. I just pushed my source to S3, and it ended up being an empty zip file. And sure enough, CloudFormation pushed an empty zip file to Lambda, so it blew away all my code. So just there's a lot of things like that you do have to watch out for. CloudFormation is very powerful; it can change everything. So play in a sandbox first. And then I like to throw in a good gotcha. So all the stuff that I did today is completely serverless. I don't use EC2. I can't even remember the last time I launched a server or I logged into a Linux box outside of something like Docker. So I always thought that was a good selling point to everybody. And I've mentioned this a bunch of times throughout. This can be used for anything other than, tons of things besides Node.js. I just live in the Node.js and Lambda world. So, and I believe, why not? You don't have to deploy to even Lambda. So you could deploy to S3. I think we were looking at that earlier. So CodePipelines is a really cool integration tool in AWS. It's a little complicated. The setup is a little bit weird, but it's super powerful. Like that last thing there, integrations can be as simple or as complex as needed. The easiest way I found was that GitHub app where you do the authentication through the AWS console. It grabs your code and it pushes it. If you get that part set up, I bet if you run tutorials through AWS and whatnot, you could get that set up in an afternoon if you have everything ready to go. So what's next for me and for maybe like the whole CICD world in general? Like where are we going? Where am I trying to go with this? Better Git integration. I really want to dig into how to utilize GitHub better. I want to manage those pull requests. I just want to make it easier for my developers to push code, and that's it. So when they hit git commit and they get a pull request, from there, all this stuff works on its own. I don't even want them to have to build spec files. I think that it's a time consuming process that I believe is a full-time job for somebody. So I'm trying to take that on a little bit. Next is going to be CloudFormation, infrastructure as code. Maybe Nick, if you got time on this channel in the next year, give me another year. So I bet I'll have this up and running in CloudFormation, so you can push a button and get this.
We always have time
and you can
for you.
run that. Oh, thanks, man. And so, that's where we're kind of going with this next. I don't want to have to set this. So if I have a new Lambda function, I don't want to go through everything that I just did. I want to, push the button and say, give me a Lambda function, and I want to have CICD out of the box. I really think that it's an odd thing that the AWS doesn't support it a little bit more, but they can leave it up to me. I'll build it for them. Then next, actually that's what I was talking about. New Lambda creation. So when I create a new Lambda function, I want CI/CD out of the box with code pipelines. So that's kind of where I'm going with this next. I will definitely keep blogs and GitHub as much as I can up to date. Just keep chugging away on this stuff. It's kind of a fun space to play in too. So kind of what we did, the obligatory of what we did. So we can push Git and we can push code to Git. We have a good workflow with pull requests, hands-off practice, that kind of thing. GitHub to AWS for CI/CD, and then we can use pipelines to stage build and deploy our code in an automated fashion even. So again, hands-off developers, let me deploy your code for you. And that's my spiel for now. Any questions? And there's my contact info again, so feel free to reach out. Everybody on Twitter, I'm pretty responsive, as Nick probably knows. And then I try to keep my GitHub and blog up to date, and then email. So thanks.
So there's no questions yet. I'll let them trickle in. I know that the group tonight has been pretty shy. I'll go over the just the meetup group again for people who came in late, so that way they know what to find, and then we'll see if there's any questions that have popped up in the chat. So I will share my screen. We gave this spiel at the beginning as well, but this is the group's landing page. So this is the Tracy Developer Meetup in Tracy, California. So we are meeting remotely for now, and our meetup calendar for the next 6 months is quite busy. So we meet once per month, and we have a variety of topics, a variety of speakers, and they're all pretty interesting. So please subscribe to the group, check back. Get involved. If you want to speak for the group, if you're looking for, maybe you want to get started speaking, maybe you're a professional speaker, we have openings from, I think, July onwards. So if you're interested, let me know. We can get you on the calendar. And am I missing anything, Chris? You attend most of these meetups.
Lambda stuff. So it's great to come by and see all the different things that everyone's working on. It's a really great opportunity.
Awesome. So it doesn't look like there's any questions trickling in, but they have your contact information, so they could always follow up if they need to. And maybe we'll call it and we'll head into our weekend. How's that sound?
Yeah, sounds good. Everyone's probably excited for the weekend, so go do it and hit me up on Twitter or blog or wherever, and we can chat. Thanks,
Yeah,
Nick.
absolutely.